Money doesn't make people stupid. It just spotlights the stupidity they were already warming up off stage. I mean, only humans could look at a paycheck and think, yes, this is the perfect time to invest in an inflatable hot tub and three identical air fryers. It's incredible how fast common sense evaporates the moment a wallet feels slightly heavier, like our brains get taxed at 100% the second we touch cash. And trust me, the financial disasters you're about to hear make that one impulsive purchase you regret look like a Nobel winning strategy. Because if you think you've wasted money before, oh no, you're just getting a tiny preview of the chaos people are truly capable of. 1. A man once told me he had finally started investing, and I was briefly proud of him before he revealed the horrifying truth. His entire portfolio consisted of Beanie Babies, not rare ones, not collectible ones. Just whatever he scooped up at garage sales, like he was rescuing endangered species. He stored them in airtight containers to preserve value, which is adorable considering most of them look like they've witnessed a crime. He kept saying, the market will explode again, as if stuffed animals follow economic cycles like oil futures. The best part? He refused to sell any because the timing isn't right. You know what else isn't right? Building your retirement plan around a plush moose named Chip. 2. I once knew a guy who bought a luxury car on a 7-year loan because, in his words, I deserve nice things. Great. You know what else he deserved? The weekly panic attack every time the payment reminder hit his inbox. He couldn't afford gas half the time, so the car basically lived in his driveway like a very shiny lawn ornament. The interior still had that new car smell because he barely drove it. He didn't want to waste mileage. He skipped vacations, sold his gaming PC, and downgraded his phone plan, all to keep up with a vehicle that existed purely to impress strangers at red lights. And even they didn't care. Nothing says financial triumph like owning a car that owns you. 3. Someone once tried to save money by cutting their own hair instead of going to a barber. Noble idea. Unfortunately, this man's skill level hovered somewhere between blindfolded toddler with scissors and YouTube tutorial gone wrong. When he inevitably butchered it, he paid not one, but two barbers to fix the damage, one to repair the structural chaos, another to blend the emergency buzz cut. Total cost? Triple the price of a normal haircut. He even said, well, at least I tried, which is what people say when they've learned nothing. Saving money isn't about trying. It's about not turning your head into a financial cautionary tale. 4. A friend of mine once bought a $900 espresso machine because, according to him, it'll save money in the long term. Cute theory. Except he didn't know how to use it, didn't want to learn, and somehow managed to burn himself on steam 3 times in one weekend. After a month of producing exclusively beige, lukewarm coffee-flavored sadness, he gave up and went right back to Starbucks, while the machine sat on his counter like a monument to failed ambition. Whenever anyone asked about it, he'd say, it's an investment, which I guess is true if the goal was investing in dust accumulation. He eventually sold it for $150, but only after spending $200 on replacement filters he never opened. Brilliant ROI. 5. I once watched a guy justify spending $300 on a revolutionary smart water bottle that glowed to remind him to drink. A bottle for water that glows. He claimed it would optimize his hydration levels, as if drinking fluids is some advanced skill requiring Bluetooth. The best part? He still didn't drink more water. The glow annoyed him, so he left the bottle in a drawer and continued being dehydrated like a houseplant someone forgot to water. Meanwhile, he refused to buy basic groceries because they were too expensive. Truly inspirational budgeting. Starve, but stay technologically hydrated. 6. My favorite financial tragedy is the person who bought a treadmill for health, used it twice, and then turned it into the world's most expensive clothing rack. Every time I visited, it had more laundry piled on it, like the machine was training for a marathon of fabric. But wait, it gets better. He kept paying a subscription for treadmill workout classes, for a treadmill he could no longer reach because of the mountain of hoodies on top. When I asked why he didn't cancel, he said, maybe I'll use it again. Sure, and maybe pigs will develop a cardio routine. 7. I knew someone who proudly declared she was finally getting her finances in order, and then celebrated this milestone by spending $600 on crystals to improve money energy. Spoiler, the money energy did not improve. In fact, the only thing that manifested was credit card debt, but she insisted it wasn't the crystal's fault. She just needed stronger ones. So she bought more. She ended up with a glittering rock collection worth more than her savings account. I'm not judging belief systems, believe whatever you want, but if your wealth strategy depends on a quartz rock vibrating hard enough to pay rent, maybe the universe is not the problem. 8. A guy once bought lottery tickets every single day because he was guaranteeing a win eventually. He spent years chasing this mathematically suicidal dream. His total winnings, $17 and a free scratcher. His total spending, enough to put a down payment on a small condo. When someone gently explained how probability works, he waved them off and said, it's about consistency. Yes, consistently losing. He wasn't playing the lottery. He was paying a daily stupidity tax, and the government thanks him for his service. 9. I once listened to a man explain that he refuses to cook at home because eating out is actually cheaper when you value your time. Interesting philosophy, especially coming from someone who spends 3 hours a night doom scrolling TikTok. He easily dropped $40 to $60 per meal while insisting groceries were just too expensive, which is hilarious considering he paid $19 for a side salad. His logic was simple. Cooking is inefficient. Spending hundreds a week is efficient. His bank account disagreed loudly. 10. A woman I knew got a store credit card because they offered her 15% off one pair of shoes. One pair. She walked out feeling victorious, unaware she had just signed up for a 28% interest rate and a lifetime of emails that start with urgent, payment due. She never used the card again but forgot to close the account. Years later, it still haunted her credit score like a financial ghost. At one point, she asked, how was I supposed to know? I don't know. Maybe the contract printed on paper, longer than a CVS receipt. 11. I once saw a guy buy a $1,200 gaming chair to improve productivity. He didn't work from home. He didn't study. He didn't create anything. He just wanted to sit more comfortably while procrastinating, which honestly is admirable commitment, except the chair arrived in 15 pieces and he refused to pay for assembly. His DIY attempt was so catastrophic that the chair tilted at a 30-degree angle, like it was trying to eject him from his own bad decisions. He kept it anyway. Productivity did not improve. 12. A man once bragged to me that he'd invested in gold, which sounded sophisticated until he clarified he bought one tiny gold bar from a mall kiosk at a 40% markup. He kept it in a sock drawer, wrapped in tissues for security, as if burglars are terrified of cotton. He showed it to every visitor like it was the crown jewel of his empire. When gold prices went up, he tried to sell it back, only to learn the kiosk doesn't buy gold. They just sell it. So now he owns an overpriced shiny rectangle and a lifetime of regret. 13. I once watched a couple spend $8,000 on a wedding arch, yes, the decorative arch, for a ceremony that lasted 12 minutes. They said it was an investment into memories, which I suppose is true if the memory is about financial trauma. After the wedding, they tried to resell it, but apparently the market for overpriced arches is smaller than they imagined. It sat in their garage for a year until they finally gave it away for free on Facebook Marketplace. They basically lit $8,000 on fire and called it romance. 14. One guy bought a 75-inch TV because it was on sale. Even though he lived in a studio so small, the screen physically didn't fit on any wall. Instead of returning it, he rearranged his entire apartment like he was solving a geometry puzzle. The final setup required sitting 3 feet from the screen, giving him the immersive sensation of being punched in the face by pixels. He kept saying, Movies look amazing now, while blinking through motion sickness. But hey, at least he saved $200. 15. A coworker once spent $500 on a course titled Unlock Your Inner Millionaire. The course included exactly three things: vague motivational quotes, a worksheet asking him to visualize wealth, and a video where the instructor said, "The first step to making money is believing you deserve it." That's it. No strategies, no skills, just vibes. Meanwhile, the instructor was clearly the real millionaire, funded entirely by people like him. When I asked what he learned, he said, "Mindset is everything," which is a poetic way of saying he learned nothing. 16. I once met someone who bragged about being financially responsible because she bought everything with coupons, which sounded noble until she showed me her receipt. She'd saved $18 by spending $300 on things she didn't need. She had 4 industrial-size bottles of mustard, a year's supply of deodorant she didn't like, and enough canned soup to survive a zombie apocalypse she clearly wasn't emotionally prepared for. But she was convinced she had won because the bottom of the receipt said, "You saved $18.42," as if that number magically erased the financial crime scene she just created. She said, "Look how much I didn't spend," which is funny because I was looking at exactly how much she did. 17. A man I knew once bought a massive inflatable pool on impulse because it was only $79, somehow forgetting that he lived in an apartment with zero outdoor space. His grand plan was to set it up in his living room, which went about as well as you'd expect. First, the floor sagged. Then the downstairs neighbor came up to ask why water was pouring through his ceiling. The guy insisted it was just a minor leak, as if indoor pools are a normal feature of rental housing. He ended up paying for the neighbor's repairs, losing his security deposit, and throwing out the pool after one glorious hour of sitting in 3 inches of lukewarm water. But hey, it was on sale. 18. My favorite financial meltdown is the guy who tried to flip concert tickets for profit without realizing he bought them for the wrong night, the wrong city, and the wrong artist. He somehow managed to purchase tickets to a cover band he'd never heard of, then got offended when nobody wanted to buy them from him at a markup. He kept saying, "They're still valuable," which is technically true in the same sense that a potato is technically a vegetable. Not wrong, but not useful either. He finally tried to attend the concert himself, only to learn it had already happened 2 weeks earlier. He blamed the website. Of course he did. Personal responsibility costs extra. 19. I once watched a coworker spend $400 on a limited edition blender because a fitness influencer said it changed her life. The blender, not shockingly, did not change his. It barely blended. It made a noise like a dying robot and produced smoothies with the texture of gravel pudding. But he refused to admit defeat, so he kept using it out of principle, which is a bold way to say he wasted half a paycheck. When customer service told him all sales were final, he said, "That's okay. It's an investment in my health," which is a poetic way of saying he just paid a premium to choke on lumpy fruit sludge. 20. A friend once decided to get into real estate, which sounded impressive until he revealed his plan: buy an old shed, repaint it, and list it online as a micro home for creatives. He genuinely believed someone would pay thousands for what was essentially a wooden closet with aspirations. He even staged it with fairy lights and a potted plant, as if Instagram decor could magically increase square footage. When no one bought it, he doubled the price because luxury buyers take things more seriously. Eventually, he gave up and used it to store the failed remains of other business ventures, which honestly made it the most successful part of the project. 21. I once saw a woman spend $250 on a money manifestation seminar held in a strip mall next to a vape shop. The instructor told everyone to visualize wealth entering their bodies, which is a sentence I wish I could forget. She came out beaming, saying she could feel abundance on the way. 2 days later, her car battery died. She insisted it was the universe testing her commitment, as if the cosmos is some petty gym coach. When I suggested maybe the seminar didn't work, she said, "You don't get it. It's about mindset." Yes, specifically the mindset of someone who will be attending another seminar very soon. 22. A guy I knew subscribed to 5 different streaming services because they're cheaper than cable, and then proudly spent more than cable ever would have cost. He never canceled any of them because he might watch something someday, even though his watch later list was longer than most novels. He even subscribed to a service he didn't realize was in a foreign language, then kept it because canceling felt like too much effort. When his bank account ran low, he complained that life is expensive, which is true, but only when you pay monthly rent on platforms you haven't opened since the Obama administration. 23. I once watched someone buy a $1,000 camera to start a photography business, which immediately failed because he discovered photography requires effort. He took exactly 14 pictures before deciding the lighting wasn't cooperating, which is the first recorded instance of a son refusing to work with a client. After a week, the camera lived permanently on a shelf, displayed like a trophy from a sport he never played, but he still called himself a creative, which is hilarious considering the most artistic thing he produced was the debt from buying the camera. 24. I knew someone who bought a treadmill desk because she wanted to walk while working, which lasted about 4 minutes before she realized typing and moving at the same time requires a level of coordination she did not possess. She kept tripping and nearly sent her laptop flying more than once. Instead of returning it, she lowered the incline, slowed the speed, and eventually stopped turning it on at all. Now it's just a regular desk with a very expensive footrest attached, but she still tells people she has an active workspace, which is true only if we count her blood pressure rising every time she looks at the credit card bill. 25. A guy once bought a full set of camping equipment: tent, stove, boots, hammock, portable shower, despite the fact that he hates bugs, dirt, and being outside longer than 5 minutes. He spent almost $1,000 preparing for a trip he never took, not once. His gear stayed in the packaging like artifacts from an alternate universe where he actually does things. But he refused to sell any of it because I might use it one day. Sure, and I might spontaneously grow wings. Both scenarios have equal probability. 26. Someone I knew subscribed to a pricey productivity app that charged $30 a month to tell him he was procrastinating. He never used it, which ironically made the app absolutely correct. Every week, it sent him reminders about goals he wasn't achieving, tasks he wasn't starting, and habits he wasn't building. It was less a productivity tool and more a digital guilt machine. But he kept paying for it because canceling feels like giving up. My friend, you gave up the moment you paid for an app to shame you. 27. A woman once bought an outrageously overpriced juicer because the salesman told her it extracts nutrients on a molecular level, which, for the record, means nothing. The machine was the size of a small washing machine, sounded like an airplane engine, and produced 3 tablespoons of juice per vegetable. She used it once, clogged it, and then realized cleaning it required dismantling approximately half the device. It now occupies its own corner like a monument to gullibility, but she insists it was an investment in wellness, even though the only thing it detoxed was her bank account. 28. I once saw a couple spend half their vacation budget on souvenirs before the vacation actually began at the airport gift shop. They bought shirts, mugs, magnets, even a decorative plate as if the terminal itself were a cultural landmark. By the time they arrived at their destination, they had no money left to do anything besides look at the ocean from a distance. When asked why they didn't wait to buy souvenirs from the actual place they visited, they said the airport had better designs. Yes, nothing says local authenticity like a keychain made in China for $19.99. 29. A man I know bought cryptocurrency because someone on Reddit told him it was guaranteed to explode. It did explode, but not in the direction he hoped. He bought at the absolute peak. It's a talent, really. And then watched his investment plummet like a roller coaster designed by gravity's biggest fan. He kept saying, "It's fine, I'm holding long term," which is financial speak for "I refuse to admit defeat." Months later, he finally sold, at a loss bigger than the original investment. He said he felt liberated. His wallet did not. 30. I once watched a friend spend $120 on a scented candle the size of a soup bowl. She justified it by saying it created emotional ambiance, which apparently refers to the mild glow of burning your money. She lit it exactly twice because she didn't want it to run out, which defeats the entire purpose of owning a candle. So it sat untouched, collecting dust until the wax faded and the smell evaporated. When I pointed this out, she said, "It's for display." Yes, a candle for people afraid of fire. 31. A guy once bought a gym membership because he was convinced paying money would force him to go. My favorite part is that he chose the most expensive package specifically for the guilt factor, as if debt is a personal trainer. He went once, pulled a muscle tying his shoe, and never returned. For 8 months, he paid the monthly fee, claiming he'd go next week. Next week, of course, never came. Eventually, the gym closed his membership for inactivity, which is a poetic way of saying even the gym gave up on him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the financial circus we call humanity. A nonstop parade of wallets making decisions their brains clearly didn't sign off on. If you think we've hit rock bottom, trust me. Somewhere out there, someone is already digging a deeper financial hole with a golden shovel they couldn't afford. So go on, tell me in the comments which disaster deserves the crown, or confess your own money crimes if you're feeling brave. And hey, if you enjoyed watching this avalanche of bad decisions, hit like, subscribe, and buckle up. The stupidity only gets richer from here.